Okay, the definition, of course, of nested loops is just like if statements, one inside the other, at least one loop inside another loop. And this is a small example, you can read it yourself. Let's go on to a practical thing. Suppose you want to print a matrix of 3 by 3 stars or any number, height can be any number, that many rows and that many columns, equal number of columns. Then do you think it will be easier with nested loops? It will be, right? Although there is a proof somewhere in computer science literature that all you need is one loop for any program, okay? One while loop. But we won't worry about theory. So assuming that we have fixed number of stars 3 in each row, column is set to 0, and this loop goes through 3 times, right? 0, 1 and 2 for column equal to 0, 1 and 2, and print that many stars. So this is the inner loop. We are coming to the outer loop. So each time you do this, you'll get 3 stars, presumably on the same row. It doesn't say so, but that's what you have to assume. So this is the pseudocode for the box of stars. This is the outer loop. While row less than 3 and while is the outer loop. And each time column is set to 0 and you do the inner loop 3 times. Okay? So this simply says go to the next line, new line character. It's used in C, C++, many other languages, Java perhaps. So this is the pseudocode, and this is the corresponding flowchart. As you can see, the inner loop is here and the outer loop is here. Once again, this time it's a little more general. You read in the height, and while row is less than height, repeat all of this. Finally, when this is not true anymore, you stop. So while this is true, you set column back to 0. Why do you do that? So that you can go through this that many times. If you forgot to do this, you'll skip this loop because you would have changed column to some new value, height. Okay, so it won't do the loop at all. And this says print new line character and increase the row count by 1. Do you have any questions on the flowchart? Okay. So you can try this program out in Python. Read in the height, change it to a number, and this is the outer loop, all of it. And you do this till you reach height minus 1, including that. So if height is 3, this goes through the loop 3 times, right? 0, 1 and 2 for row. Each time you increment row by 1 here. So once again, this inner loops here, and you restart it each time. So a column is set to 0, and you go through this, if height is 3, 3 times as well. This end equals blank character or null character keeps printing on the same line basically. Okay? And this says go to the next line, print with nothing in it. Do you have any questions on this sample? Okay, please try it out. It's very simple. You can cut and paste it from the PowerPoint. Next, the inner loop can be controlled by variables in the outer loop. For example, if you want to print a row of stars, several rows of stars like this, left justified. And if the height is 4, you have 4 rows and up to 4 columns. But after the first star, you have 3 blanks basically. After the first 2 stars, there's nothing there, and so on. So to do this, please note this while condition has changed. It says not while column is less than height, but column less than equal to value of row. But does the value of row change each time? It does, right? So when row is 0 and column is 0, you're going to print 1 star and stop this loop. Go to the next line. Change row to a 1 now. Because row is 1 and you start column back to 0, you print 2 stars on the next line, and so on, up to 4 stars on the last line if height is 4. Any questions on that? So given the height, you print that many rows, and on the last row you print that many stars. Okay? This again pseudocode, that's why we have do here. It doesn't matter if it's lowercase, uppercase. Colon is for Python. And to indicate the end of the while, we have end while here and here. So this is a nested loop. These are nested loops. And in flowchart form, as you can see, this is the outer loop, this is the inner loop, and please note this condition here, column less than row. Okay, check the accuracy. I'm not absolutely certain that this is correct. Finally, this is the program. Read the height and print that many rows, same as before. But how many stars do you print on each row depends on the value of row. Okay? So when row is 0, you print 1 star. When row is now a 1, print 2 stars, and so on down the line. Also worth trying out. If it has to be right justified like this, then the technique would be to print 3 blanks and then a star. Print 2 blanks, then 2 stars. Print 1 blank and 3 stars. And then print 0 blanks and 4 stars. Okay? So the loops have to be modified a little bit, and the pseudocode becomes more complicated. Now, we don't have to worry about all the details, but basically the outer loop prints all the rows. And this prints enough number of spaces. This formula gives you that condition. I'll explain it in a minute. Print a few spaces, then print a few stars, and go on to the next row. So this time we have nested loops where there are 3 loops. There are 2 within this outer loop. So you can have any number of loops inside a loop. And then of course you can have more loops here at the end of this while loop, right? Depending on how complicated the program is. Now this formula, when row is 0 and height is 4, this says print how many spaces. Height is 4, row is 0, minus 1, so that's 3, right? 3 spaces, and then a star. When row is 1, height is 4, this works out to 2. So print 2 spaces and 2 stars, and so on. Okay, so this is the only critical change that we have made from here to here. And the corresponding flowchart shows you the outer loop with 2 inner loops. Now I don't need to explain it, we've gone through the pseudocode already. Okay. So this is a corresponding program, but please note we've forgotten a colon over here. The while loop, the first while loop needs a colon also. The rest of it is very clear. It follows the pseudocode and the flowchart. Okay. Do you have any questions on this? This is also worth trying in Python. Now this is more complicated. Depending on the number of rows, you're printing almost twice as many stars, right? Minus 1. So 7 stars in this, 5 in this, and enough number of blank spaces, etc. So we'll need at least 3 loops. Now this pseudocode has at least one error that I can see. This while loop should not end here, basically. Should end somewhere here. Because first you print spaces, then you print a star, and you have to print some more stars, right? So that part is missing from here. There's no point printing spaces afterwards. So there's something wrong with this. If you want, you can try and play with it and fix it and write the Python, modify the code we just saw, and so on. Okay. So I know this has flaws in it. That's what I'm saying. All right. This, we don't have pseudocode for this, but if you have 4 rows, you want to print a pyramid and its reflection. So the pseudocode has this formula in it, rows times 2 minus 1, because if rows is 4, row is 4, then this 8 minus 1, 7 lines of output, right? This formula is the same as before to print the number of spaces. But this time we have one loop here, one inner loop, second inner loop, and then it continues on the next page. One more while loop to print the bottom half of the pyramid. Enough spaces. Those 2 loops are reversed now, okay, and enough stars. So again, this is optional. If you feel like it, you can work on it, but this is too complicated for test. I'm not going to ask you anything like that. Any of these basically, maybe except for the first one where you had 3 by 3 rows of stars or something. And then this is even harder because you have spaces, stars, and spaces mixed in. Okay? So let me just do a couple of examples of nested loops, which we'll probably find on the Y drive under code samples. And I'm not sure which ones those are, so let's try this one, while to. No, this is just a formatting example with just one while loop. So you can run this and see. It should print out the squares of numbers from 1 to whatever the limit value is, 10, let's say. Okay? Multiply nested loop. And we'll do for loops also, nested loops. I'll do these 2 examples. Okay. Suppose I read n equal to 5. Then we have n plus 1, so that the for loop goes 1 through 5. Okay? Because we have to do that in Python. So the inner loop also goes from 1 through 5, and this will print a multiplication table of I times j. So let's run it, and I'll put in 10 as example. Okay, that's the wrong version of Python, so it doesn't like the end. I'll open it with okay, now it should run fine. Enter a positive integer, let's put in 10. And it prints this table 1 through 10, 1 through 10, and then the product 2 times those numbers in the first line and so on. Okay, so you've seen this multiplication table many times. So let's examine the code just a little bit to see if it matches the output. So I put in 10, so this goes 1 through 10, not 1 through 11, please note. And this also goes 1 through 10. And it prints that out, I times j, tabs over to the next column, which is usually 8 spaces to the right, and this says stay on the same line. When this inner loop's done, we do the print statement to go to the next line, and the loop continues, the outer loop continues. Okay? So does J start again with 1? It does, right? Because it does not remember what the last value was and it has to restart. Okay, let's see if we can run the other one. Nested loops. We did that already, I think. No. Multiply nested loops. I hope it's not exactly the same.
It's the same one.
It's the same one? Okay, then let's not worry about it. So, but it's worth experimenting with nested loops to see how they work.
What's nested for?
You were going to look at the one
Nested
below.
for? Okay. Then we got to go back to Python. But we did run nested for. I mean, at least, no, it's different. Okay. Nested for. Oh, this fixed number of times. So will the for loop go through 10 times? Yes. Same here. The product is row times column, so it's very similar. It's the same idea basically. So we should get the same result, right? It's just formatted a little differently. 3D means print in 3 places, and the 0 refers to the first item in this list here. First item in this list. Okay? Any questions on it? Okay. So please read this chapter carefully also. And do you have any questions on anything? Okay, I'm going to stop here. Okay?